So I need to share.
If everything is going, if everything goes this year, we hope it will. The picture will have to change.
Yeah.
It'll be added to the where we've been.
Yeah, where we've been, where we are.
So to talk about where we've come from, is sorry guys, I'm still new at this. Okay. All right. So, so a little bit about us. I'm just gonna say, my wife is not an employee for us, but she proves a lot of the things, especially with us being short staffed. And I knew John was gonna cringe at this moment of it. Yeah. So she's a volunteer, so as what she said, since she's the one that came up with the slideshow. So we'll slide to that. So everybody should have met Carmen by now. Jim Peter serves as our township shelter director, and he does a great job down managing the schedule and everything down there. So our mission statement, which everybody, I'm not going to say everybody can read it amongst themselves. That's what we have to focus on. That's where we have to focus on what we're here to do. And I think that mission statement really says, okay, that's what we're doing. Before, when I was elected in 2022 and before, we had no parks. Township assistance was done one time a year. They were working outside of township standards and guidelines. They hadn't adopted township standards and guidelines because they were required to, but they did not follow them. And that was one of the things when we started going to classes and realizing, hey, this isn't right. We made those changes. And then township assistance, a lot of it was COVID lockdowns. You'll see some of the numbers in our annual report that talks about where our numbers have come from and where they've jumped to.
So assistance was issued one time a year to a person, or there was one day a year everybody came to?
One time you were allowed to come in, apply for assistance. If you ever needed any more money, they said, we'll see you next year.
And people came back.
That's exactly right.
Hmm.
It was almost, I mean, you could just set the calendar down to it.
Wow.
And then, so when we started, it was like, well, hey, we have this, what's this TA1B? Why don't we use it? And it was like, oh, well, I don't know. Oh, it's because it was the reoccurring. And yeah, well, you
But there would
can't,
have been no reoccurring under this.
no, because they didn't do it.
There, just didn't.
And that was a local thing. It wasn't a state thing.
Yeah, right,
That was,
right.
so. Township cemeteries were mowed 6 to 8 times a year. We had mowing complaints constantly in our office, especially in the spring years. At the end of 2022, we spent $30,000 cutting down trees in cemeteries, and it was something that the previous trustee had started the plan on. He wanted to work on some of these, and just he never got to it. The community partnership, we had 9 service agreements. We had outdated referrals of nonprofits, and most of these nonprofits were dissolved because of COVID. They just didn't exist, but they were still pamphlets sitting on our desk. So one day I was in there and I was like, well, let's pick one up and look what they can do so I can refer them. Oh, that phone number is dead, and just picked up the next one. And so it was just kind of an outdated system we had going on. Not to bash anybody. They did what they could with the time that they had.
And who was before you?
Steve Leonard,
Oh.
and then before that was Ron Horning.
Got it.
That would be the fire chief's father.
Gotcha.
Small worlds where we live in. Through 2023 to 2024, we still had no actual township park. So that's where we kept in with our service agreement with Greenfield Parks. Is they provide a park. We don't pay for it. This is our service contract. I was watching. We established the cemetery rules and regulations. We passed the State Board of Accounts with audit with no remarks, which I'm very proud of.
Are those annual?
No.
Every 5 years, I think.
So
It was.
yeah, they audited us from 2016 on. Every 2016 to 2023 is when our audit.
That was the scope of the audit?
Yes.
Okay.
So it was that side of the room, all the boxes, and they were all sitting there when they all walked in and started their audit. and they charged us $5,000 to have that audit. We built partnerships with area business and nonprofits. Our township assistants, we increased our hours, so before our hours were Monday through Thursday from 9 a.m. until noon, and on Thursday was 9 till 1. And that 14 hours was because state mandate requires 14 hours township has to be open. So that's where they came up with their number. Our first year, we opened directly up 9 to noon, Monday through Friday, so there's no confusion on early days or anything like that. We brought in new software, everything's stored locally. It's not web-based, wasn't anything out there that we couldn't get a hold of, and where they tried to, take our data and not give it back to us, which is one company, not to name names. We maintain our annual training, and so we send out the township, well, actually, all the crew, we all went out and went to the township assistance training, went to the State Board of Accounts dry meetings that they had. We went through all of those. And that wasn't something that they did before. Steve went, I think twice. Did Ron go? Okay. I know the staff didn't. That wasn't anything that they went to. In our cemeteries, we established or updated our that's not supposed to say cemeteries. But we updated our internal controls to make it, something that actually works with what we're doing. We published our employee handbook, something that John wanted to be working on, updated and maintained our policies. We maintained our capital improvement plan by doing work in our cemeteries and spending down some money. We improved our cybersecurity concerns. When I walked in, there was a Post-it note with the password of all the computers, and that's the voicemail that had a tape that flipped over. It was great.
Do we have a written information security policy?
Yeah. Yes, we have cyber dude.
Yeah, we have-
We have to appoint a cyber dude.
Whatever the state mandated us to do, we did that like 2022.
I don't remember if we have an actual separate thing there.
Or like
but
an
it's
incident
something-
response plan or?
Well, that's established by the Indiana Office of Technology of what our plan is. And yes, that is written out in there. If we have anything, I have to be the one that calls the state and blah, 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 and reports that way.
Okay.
So yes, that is written down.
Okay, so we don't have any separate agreements with like an emergency response vendor or anything like that?
So we do with Kemper, so we have a server here locally, and then that gets backed up. And so if there's anything that comes back, that gets backed up every 12 hours. And so at a worst time, we'll lose 12 hours of data. And that's backed up remotely that they can come back in and install.
Okay, are you who gets called as cyber counsel, John?
Oh, I get a call. There's nobody else at this point that I'm aware of, but I can assure you, if we have a problem, we're gonna find somebody who's an expert, not me.
Okay.
I think, I'm looking here real quick to try to answer this question, but I think some of this is covered in the internal control thing. Part of that, we put some security stuff in there, if I remember right, so. It's somewhere.
Sorry, my data screen privacy attorney brain clicked on.
While he's looking that up, the warming center, we negotiated the multi-year contract. We got awarded a grant to purchase the first of the cots, which we all saw that today. We set a standards for our volunteers to simplify the process. One day I'll have you guys come down there so you guys can see the warming center in action. Hopefully I think we've got a long ways to go, but yeah. Under township assistance, and this is the chart, so your darker green, that would be requests that came through the door either by phone or, some kind of contact with a client. The lighter green is, yep.
Yes, I was looking at the street.
So your lighter green would be actual TA ones that were submitted, and then your gray is your TA 1Bs. So as I said, John's got to go back to the IT.
Well, it's section 11 of that, says disaster recovery, restore software, hardware, to working order, specifications. It looks like we got microspectrum still in there. We might want to take that there.
That was our old program, so yeah.
trustees personally familiar with hardware and software used in servicing, blah, blah. So there is some stuff in there. It's not necessarily exactly what you're talking about. We don't have a separate policy.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
So you said the dark green bar was intake, total intake?
The intake, phone calls, any kind of contact we ever get, that gets recorded, and that's what those numbers are. And you can see in 2018, 19, and 20, that was COVID. And that was when they had an additional appropriation that they were able to give additional resources out. And so there was heightened numbers of those. And they never filled out a repeat TA1B. They didn't know it existed. So they also, that's where the TA1s were inflated.
Ah.
So talk about the COVID. I don't know why I just stopped and just wait for questions, but let's see. And then for 23 current, okay, everything I just said. Questions on that? So from 25 and beyond, these are kind of our goal, like the goals that I've set up, the goals that from previous boards, and just, you know, what do we want out of this going forward? You know, we talked about location, if we had a Center Township Parks and Rec building to give back, that we would maintain a community room and give back into the community of that way to say, hey, your taxpayers' dollars are paying for this, so this is what you get out of it, right? Township assistance, we want to ensure that our information is out. So this flyer is part of that. You know, we don't want anybody to come back and say, we didn't know you existed. Expand our reach and accountability. I've seen, and for many of the bills that are currently in legislation, it's attacking of townships because they're not accountable. And I want to stop that. I mean, I am going to be very transparent with anything that you want to know about, you know, what this job is, in case you want it. But also because that's what's owed to the electorate. Township cemeteries, I want to be compliant on all the township's properties. Compliance is what state statute puts it at. Yes, I'm not going to get charged with a misdemeanor, but still need to be compliant with it. Prepare the township for burial requests going forward. Well, that's what I like it to be. Obviously, we'll go forward and see what it looks like. I'd also like to see us in the warming center and the cooling center stages have a solid plan for when this issue arises, because it's not going away. Homelessness in this community is not going away. We do not have a solution for low-income housing. We do not have a solution for just social issues that we have in this community. And so we've got to come up with a plan. And this, and you know, what we've been doing in the shelter, I mean, is a plan. Long-term storage for individuals. They don't need to store their winter coats out there. And so I saw a model of at another shelter. They had these storage bins that everybody was allotted to, and they could store non-perishable and non-weapons inside so that they didn't get lost or if they got incarcerated. So that was something that is a need. Permanent mailing address. They can't get an ID because they don't have a mailing address. And I was also shown that through the postmaster here and at that place of this being their mailbox, where they can get their and get their things, and then also store documents. They don't have a place to accurately store the stuff. And so we could possibly look into doing that for them as well. Their social security cards, driver's license, things like that.
So they can use a non-resident address to get an ID?
So that is through just specifically the postmaster. So we'd have to go through them to ensure
Got
that
it.
they
Okay.
understand.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Let me tell you a little bit of what happened this week. Somebody put in a stop mailing address or a hold mail for all the township. So we didn't get mail for 30 days. Just because somebody put the wrong address on there. How did you mess that up? And then they allowed it to go through. So for 30, I'm like, man, we should be getting things in the mail. That's weird. So I ended up having to call down there. The day I got it, it was a big stack of envelopes and everything that had been held. And I'm like, you can't do that. I said, you can do that for anybody? And they were like, well, no. And I said, good, because I was going to go down to City Hall and put a stop mail on all their mail. So, yeah, anyway, that was a fun encounter that I had to deal with last week. Provide life skill classes under one roof and establish resources for the community. Corby, I promise I'm getting there. Community cemeteries, so that slide kind of gave you an idea of what we've been able to do in those, and then what it looks like now to what we want to be doing. And then this gets into the big conversation of a building. So, this is where we talked about, and I've sent you guys all a building that I was looking at and was interested in. It had an open lot attached to it. And so this was a 4-acre lot or 4-acre property that would give us an area that we could do a build out. This property had an opportunity for 3 tenants inside of it, and 2 of them were long-term tenants. It would have brought us in a revenue from those tenants. The box that you see there is a I can't remember the exact size of it now, but I put a note on there of the Boys and Girls Club gym that we use is 50 by 80 feet. And so that kind of gave us an idea of a footprint of what size space we would need for a shelter. The other items that I wanted to include into this was common area, showers, a computer lab, an office space. We have Hancock Rapid Response come and see our clients. We have the Board of Health that comes and does health checks for these individuals as well. So it'd be nice to be able to have a space for them to go in privately and have these done. Also like to see a mixed use space for the kitchen. So if we have a disaster shelter, which the conversation of a disaster shelter was made when we had an apartment complex here in the community catch on fire and displace 14 individuals or 14 families. One of our local churches, it was a huge burden on them, but took those families in and housed them. This would, and as the previous board made it, what can we do in that instance to help them out? And as a township assistance, we couldn't pay their rent because they weren't living there. We couldn't find them a new place because everybody's full. So township assistance wise, there really wasn't anything that we were able to do. This would have been something. We have the cots, we have the equipment. We could open up a disaster shelter, and our contract with the Boys and Girls Club specifies that, or we can give notice, open up a shelter for residents like that. The most closest event this year would have been a Brickyard Nursing Home caught fire. It was contained into one room. However, if it had not been contained and they needed to evacuate, the warming center was open that night and they would have evacuated using the senior services buses and the schools to transport them to the shelter. And they would have been able to operate out of there. Would also like to provide some washers and dryers, long-term storage options in the community room. So that was the conversation on this property. I also kind of gave you like a little sketch out of what that area would look like. Obviously, I'm no architect, so, but that at least gave you some kind of idea of what it is I was looking for. With that said,
Are these,
restrooms,
how
the
much of
shower,
this is existing, I guess?
nothing. Everything red would be built out.
Okay.
So the existing would have been this wall in between the red, and that's where I was proposing of the kitchen going. Because the township suite would have been able to use the south end of the building because it was vacant.
Got it.
And so we had talked about that kitchen space utilizing Meals on Wheels. They were outgrowing of their space there at the hospital. And so if we have to maintain a space for the shelter, not necessarily the size that Meals on Wheels would need, but if we're going to go out and do it, then let's make it where we are in case of an emergency. If the soup kitchen has anything that major happens there, it's an old building, something could happen. That's a huge resource in this community that no one would be able to undertake. So if we're required to have that through Red Cross, then let's actually do it right. And then we can give back in those ways that kind of justify spending that money.
So I think you already said this, but the site you said says it's 54% leased. Is that still accurate?
It is not, it is no longer accurate as
Okay,
of
okay.
last week.
Okay. So it's full vacancy then?
No, it's fully occupied.
Oh, fully occupied?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So this building is no longer available. However, I spent so much work on this. I wanted to share with you. I wanted to share with you what it would like, what the idea
The
was
vision, yeah,
on.
okay, I got it.
So they have moved forward with renting out the third suite. They have countered us and said, if you would like, we would build, we'll build whatever you want us to build on the empty lot if you lease it from us. Obviously, I'm not really, I need a solution for our offices as soon as possible. Y'all are gonna love it when I put the refrigerator in there. Um, so, that's not necessarily an option, which then stirred up the conversation with John Apple and I of, if there's a space that's available, there is an agreement that, okay, there is, the board needed to give me the authority to go into an, short term, it wasn't an actual purchase agreement, but it was,
Letter of intent.
okay, there you go. Now remember that conversation?
But yeah. So. Let me back my train up just a little bit and give you all my position. My position on this is, if you find something that you think you're interested in, then you're gonna hire me, an attorney of some sort. Somebody's gonna be involved in getting that property purchased. And we're gonna need obviously a purchase price and all those technical terms. But we're also gonna need a due diligence period to make sure that everything's in order, the zoning, the structure, anything else we decide to do. And I'm finding in my practice that letters of intent are like the major thing. If it's an attorney, it bugs me because I just rather do the purchase agreement.
Sure.
But letters of intent being things that are not binding, it's just the parties basically agree, we're gonna put status quo and negotiate to get a final purchase agreement for 60 days or something like that. I think you could perhaps give the trustee authority to potentially enter into something like that, or we could do a special meeting and you could take a look yourself. That's up to you all. But that would give us sort of time to take a breath, make sure we've got everything in order before we get a final purchase agreement, if something's found. And then obviously, I'm sure the financing guys will want to talk to you too. So that's what I suggested to Thomas as the way to kind of do this, because if there's something that does come up and it's good and it may not be there, or it may get rented in the meantime. So
That's really the reason we lost this building here, which would ideal. We really liked it. Nobody had the authority to do something like you're suggesting.
immediately, yes.
Immediately.
I mean, you could have called on 48 hours with notice proper and all that. You could have called a special meeting and done it, but I don't even know. That might have even been quick.
Yeah, that may not have worked. So,
I mean, in this particular instance, I actually represent this person who was selling or and I wrote some of the leases on that building. So I kind of had an idea what was going on, but I suspect he was one that was he was gonna move quickly regardless.
So you were looking to purchasing the full building, the full property?
yeah, we're going to purchase the whole body. And the reason that we liked it a lot is because of the forward thinking that we're going to shelter and those kinds of things, was that lot was right there off of that south end, which would be perfect for a later
Right,
building.
right. Yeah.
And when having the lease set up the way it was, they would have been paying us, which we could have then used to start paying down the bond that we would have to get first, because the building was set up for 2.1 million, if I'm not mistaken.
2.2, I think that's what I was here.
And so we would have to write a bond because we don't have that much cash. So we'd had to put a 10-year bond out to do it. And then the people that are leasing it would then pay the lease to us, which we could then use to pay down the bond.
Mhm.
Or put it aside and they would do the build out of it. But we need to get, my position is we need to give Thomas the authority to do. It was, it's so hard to find a place in Hancock County. That you need to make a decision quick, because, you know,
But the decision is not binding. It's not going in and saying we are gonna buy it without you guys.
no, the board
Input
would have to
later.
approve it.
Given a stamp before we could really go forward, but it would, what I said is in status quo, it give you the opportunity to enter into it, say. And I think any letter of intent, if I were involved in it, then would probably have a provision in it that says this is subject to approval by the Center Township Board. Anyway, so we would put that in regardless. But the question for you as the board is, what authority level do you want to give to Thomas to enter into things like that? Or would you say, or would you rather, nope, if we're gonna have something like this, we call a special meeting and then we approve or don't approve? That's your call.
What, calling a
think we
special
need
meeting for all three of us, for me, it's no problem, because, you know, I'm retired. But for you two guys, it's gonna be difficult to call a special meeting and get everybody involved, you know. And John, you would have to be involved, I would assume, in that too, wouldn't you?
I would think I would be here.
Yeah.
I can kind of wing it.
And how much notice do we, or is it 48 hours?
Yeah, unless it's an emergency, which I don't think this is an emergency, it has to be 48 business hours. So
And then we'd have to publish that.
you don't have to publish a notice, you have to post the notice and provide it to the paper at least 48 business hours prior to that. So you're looking at, you're looking at a minimum 2-day turnaround regardless.
And with, that kind of property will be going in.
Got in 24 hours.
But, so I think, to my personal view, we need to give Thomas the authority to go ahead and act on something that comes up. He knows, we know what we want. And if a building does come up, we need to act on it quickly.
So I have Corby here today to talk about, we all discussed bonds. And so Corby was gonna give the insight about how we'd be able to finance it. So then everybody has all the information on moving forward. Corby.
Yeah, so I think before you would even have the ability to do anything, like sign a letter of intent or anything, I think we need to get a bond council on board. And basically get a bond ordinance introduced, because that's really the minimum. It's really the jumping off point and getting the whole bonding process started that even allows us to kind of move forward with the bonding process. They'll also be able to provide us, a bunch of good information on legally what we can do, what we can't do, because and John, you might have some insights there, but it is a process. So I think first and foremost, we need to get some kind of bond counsel on board, get a bond ordinance in front of somebody, well, in front of you guys.
So that does not bind us to anything. That
No.
just puts us, so we've got pre-approval with our finance. This is for the lawyer and the accountant are talking different terms here.
Yeah.
In my letter of intent, it is going to say subject to financing type thing. It's, what you're saying is we get the pre-approval process started with the bond ordinance so that we're ready to go, and it won't take 10 times longer than it should have.
Exactly.
What the seller's gonna say, you mean I have to wait a whole year before?
Right. It doesn't take a year, but nonetheless, if you sign a letter of intent, I'm assuming it's gonna be 60, 90 days or something along those lines.
I think we. To make sure we're zoned right, because we're not gonna be zoned right, no matter what you buy, the city's gonna go, nope, that's not allowed. So it's gonna take us some time, but your point's well taken.
Yeah,
Getting started on the pre-approval. This is the buyer who comes in and already has a letter in their hand that says, I'm pre-approved for this loan amount. Well, that's fine as long as this appraises for that amount, that.
right. And there's all kinds of stuff that goes on with that, like in order to have tax exempt bonds, you need that opinion.
So we would have to hire another person to do that?
Yes,
Or
That bond counsel.
can't we pay you to do that?
I'm not really bond counsel. I would probably serve as your local counsel. but there needs to be bond counsel. When schools bond, for example, and this is the only place, when schools bond, they'll have bond counsel and other consultants involved in that, and then my office has served as local counsel
Right,
sometimes. To deal with these internal local issues, like making sure you guys have approved it correctly and all that kind of stuff. And then sometimes we do have to write some level of opinion, but the bond counsel ultimately is writing the opinion that, oh, guess what? It's all correct, and if it's not correct, my malpractice insurance is gonna pay for this. So,
Yeah, that was Dan Straw was involved.
yeah, Dan was local counsel.
Was local counsel on schools.
So I might be that, but bond counsel would have to be invoked and.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
so I will say I did bond counsel work for about 5 months when I first started as an attorney. So I actually spoke with one of my colleagues, leading up to this, because I was assuming we're gonna do a general obligation bond. So we're gonna need to get our debt
Wow.
limits figured, maybe.
Yeah. I haven't even done all this calculation, but I'm assuming this can just be,
Okay,
other people have to go to like a building or something, but I
Yeah.
think we can do it.
Yep.
I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I will say she offered to come and talk to the board for free. At any point that the board wants to talk with her. So we won't be charged for her to come speak to us, and I'll do whatever I need to do for whatever conflict of interest stuff, whenever that becomes a problem.
What firm is that?
Ice Miller.
Like, oh,
And she said, because I mentioned you, so she's worked with you guys before and your boss, so, Heather James,
oh, yeah, yeah.
so. So,
Is that who you're gonna meet for dinner?
No, this was the AIM legislative dinner. Just. Yeah.
but so, because I wanted to get some of the timetables, knowing that we we're talking about the building. And so it seems like it would take like 3 to 4 months to go through the bond process, because I know we gotta figure out our debt limits and how we're gonna issue it, if it's gonna be to a bank or if we're gonna take it to market and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I completely agree that getting that process rolling sooner rather than later.
And they're the ones that typically put together the timeline, and making sure that all these notices, because like I know for the bond ordinance, there's at least a 20-day remonstrance period after you adopt it.
Yes.
I think you can adopt it in one meeting, then you gotta suspend the rules and has to be unanimous decision to adopt it, but nonetheless, there's all these kinds of different moving parts here, just simply for getting the bond ordinance approved. And then they're kind of, once a lot of that's taken care of, it's up to us to go sell the bonds. And the bond ordinance typically kind of specifies how we might be going about the sale, not always, but sometimes it mentions kind of the type of sale that we're gonna be looking at. I think for you guys, the best place to start would just be go to Greenfield Bank, because I know they've done deals with Greenfield before. So that's kind of where I would start, and if they come back with a good rate, then that's the cheapest way to sell these things. But nonetheless, there's other ways to sell them. You go to open market, maybe you get a little bit better of an interest rate, but then there's a lot more professional fees involved in this going about that. And there's also continuing disclosure, which is another whole thing there, but I just think getting the bond council on board, speaking with them, getting the whole process started with the bond ordinance at least gets us the ability to move quickly when it's time.
So order of operations would be potential presentation from Heather or somebody. She would draft the bond ordinance if we retained her.
Yeah, I would work with her on setting, there's a bunch of parameters in there she's gonna want.
And are those kind of cookie cutter, I hate to say it that way, but township to township, county to county?
Township bonds aren't super common, but about the only time the townships issue bonds are when they're larger townships and they're doing something like this. I'm currently working with Noblesville Township, who they want to kind of expand. Now, they already have a building.
Okay.
But they're looking at kind of potentially doing a bond to expand their services for stuff that Thomas is talking about.
Okay.
Sometimes I've done a bond with a really small township too, where they purchase a park. So there, it does happen. So it's definitely less common though than a city or town going out. And
I imagine she has some forms, she has.
Yeah,
money in.
yes, no, there's
It's sort of
they're
boilerplate.
all pretty much the same, right?
Yeah.
But with it being a township, it will be a little bit different, but the parameters will just basically be, maximum bond amount, maximum interest rate you guys are willing to go with,
Okay.
maximum term on the bonds,
And he or she or whoever we get can guide us on what's typical, what makes sense, what would be too far afield.
Right, yeah, typically we would be the ones helping with
Okay.
those parameters, just, and like I said, we'll go through that process if we're real serious about doing this, because, you know, the last board, we had a discussion, but for one reason or another, we either just delayed it, or can't remember exactly what happened there, but,
Forgive me, I'm old. But didn't we, you and I had the meeting the other day. Was there an option that we kind of looked at it as buying a piece of land and then building,
Well, and
building on it?
so, I mean, let's be honest, the building that we were looking at, or that I was looking at, was a lot of money. There was a lot of money for that building. I don't necessarily know that that was the right price for it. But that's also, if that's going rate, you know, then, you know, if we're spending that much money, how much money is it gonna be for us to just build what we need?
Can we do that, something like that?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to buy a building that's already there. You can buy ground and build. It's just a lot more complicated to do. But if you find a place that suits you, that just requires some level of updating or
Yeah,
addition,
well,
that would be way better. No, you could build a suit, no question about it.
So that's, you know, this
We
is,
still have to go to,
Yeah, I mean, you still ultimately likely want to take out a bond. Now, maybe, and this is something that Heather would help with, right? And in the bond ordinance, it also might say something about bans or bond anticipation notes. So if you're looking at a site and you find a good site, but it's still, you know, $500,000 for the lot or whatever it is, you know, we can go and issue what's called bond anticipation notes. And you can get some upfront money without taking out the whole bonds. In order to get this thing started. Now, those can only be outstanding for 5 years. So you really need to start moving and making sure that, now, I don't think construction of this thing will take 5 years, but nonetheless, if you do that, you know, you're stepping in.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And we typically, is it what, like 85% has to be spent within like a certain amount of time?
Yes, now with the bond anticipation notes, that'll buy you some time, right?
Okay.
So if you, like, right, if you purchase the site, those can be outstanding for 5 years and would only issue the bans in order to get the site, right? So that'll all be spent. But yeah, if you go out and you want to just do the whole bonds and I wouldn't recommend this, but yes, there are spend down requirements, right? There's like so much right off the bat that you've got to spend within like the first 6 months. But yeah, I think that the big one's like the 18-month one, and it's somewhere around 100%, yeah.
well,
As long as, and then there's exceptions to that too. It's like if something happens, it's like, well, we couldn't. Right, then it's, but there needs to be a reason.
The issues on buying, or what I want you to look at if you're going to consider fair land. Number one issue, the number one thing you need to have in place is the infrastructure. You gotta have public utilities. Everything has to be there. Because we'll never meet those deadlines if we don't have everything right there. So this site that you were looking at already had everything there. If that was a bare lot, maybe it would be a good buy and go ahead and build your suit. But don't buy, like in Maxwell, where we had the fire.
yeah.
Don't buy that. We don't have sewer and water there yet, you know, that kind of thing. So that would be my encouragement to you.
Well, now it'd probably be someplace that's out, I would say at least in that, within the Greenfield city limits, because they got,
Yes, there's a lot of infrastructure out there.
there's a lot of infrastructure out there.
I mean, let's be honest, north of the interstate, there isn't much infrastructure out there yet.
Yeah.
You're looking at something south of Cinnamon.
Well, I think we really need to get started on the,
Yeah, if you want to move forward as quickly as you can and get the process started, I'd say
yeah,
let's get Heather in here as soon as you guys are willing to meet with her. But yeah, that's gonna be step one in order to get the thing.
yeah. I think we need, it's
Yeah.
a minimum, we need to do that. And also, now we need to start that, but we also need to give Thomas authority to, that if a building does come up and it meets the specifications that we got, price range, we'll, act on it with that, letter of intent, I guess it's called, John?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But I understood it to mean the bond ordinance needed to be in place first, or did I misunderstand?
I don't know that it absolutely has to be.
Yeah, I would say, I don't know if it has to be, but I just don't want to sign some letter of intent. And it's only, good for 90 days, but if you're gonna put half a year in there, we can certainly go through the bond process in 6 months. But 3 months is,
Okay.
3 months is kind of like, again, depends how many times you wanna meet, that kind of thing, but if you're only meeting once a month, I'd say a minimum of 3 months is what I would like to have.
If we had something that we're going to move on, we would be meeting more than just the once a month.
Yeah, and there's still there's still other timing issues. And it don't mean issues, just stuff has to get done. You have to have the buyer, their counsel has to review all the offering documents and back and forth a little bit there and.
The recordings have to occur on the morning of and none.
That's.
Script resolutions we had to run through.
So my take on this, just try to get what you're wanting done. My take on this is if you're gonna give authority, we're gonna need to, we are going to need to make sure that any kind of letter of intent has right up front what's going on here. We're a township, we can only act as a government entity on so fast of a deal, that's how we're making it here. So we're gonna have to have this much time. Maybe it's 6 months to do due diligence, which would include financing and an option for another 6 months type thing. I mean, we may have to give a little in typical negotiations because we don't have the cash in hand.
Agreed.
And so we're gonna be very careful with any letter of intent we do to make sure we have plenty. But getting it started, if you guys are really serious, I agree with him. Let's go ahead and get that part in place so that if we find something 6 months down the road, we can act a lot faster.
And it's not that we have to,
No, yeah,
there's no,
There's a little
having
clause.
the bond ordinance does not, it doesn't lock you into doing any of it. You can
Okay.
just
There's just-
adopt it. Now she's gonna send you a bill for getting that. But, yeah,
yeah,
but, typically her fees would be paid out of the bond proceeds anyways, but if time goes on too long, she's gonna want something, so.
all right, so, okay. So I think what we're talking about, we'll get Heather in, is there a name or?
Yeah, I'll call her tonight. and See if, do we want to try and meet in February, but to let her get in, or do we want to just save it till the March meeting, or?
That depends on what. Get another meeting in February if you can.
I'm open to that.
Okay, but like you said, it depends on you. The only day there is no day I can't be.
Your injections are on Tuesday.
Oh, no, they've changed my injections are on Tuesday, but
Okay.
they've moved me up six.
And Thursdays are
weeks
still
now.
best for you.
Mhm.
And
So I don't have
Thursdays are okay
another
with you?
injection until the
Uh,
fourth.
with the exception of next Thursday, because it's the Thursday before Valentine's Day, so I will be,
And actually, the Thursday after that, for me, is no good.
okay.
So the 20th is no
Well,
good for
it
you.
don't have to be on Thursday. Okay.
Yeah, could we do the 19th?
You can do it without me.
I don't think that's a good idea.
What about the 18th?
I can do the 18th. That's not good for you.
I can make that work, yeah. Thursdays tend to be better, but it's not a hard and fast rule.
It's good. 18th's
Yeah.
good for me also.
Okay.
We don't have to publish anything on that, do we?
Go, yeah, we do. We'll have to send it to the paper.
So
We got plenty, more than 48 hours.
Yep.
but we're good.
I will,
Okay.
I will contact, see if she can do February 18th.
Okay, and that'd be.
Yeah, can we come up with a second date just in case that does not work with her?
That'd be fine. with me.
Uh,
You do 24, 25, 26.
I can do 25, 26.
Either day's okay.
25, I'm good at 26.
Either day's okay.
Corby?
18 is, well, I just have a Warren Township meeting at 6, so I don't think she'll take too long. I mean, she'll probably just kind of.
This will be a one item
Yeah, I think
agenda.
she's just gonna give you the proposal, maybe talk a little bit about the process and what she's gonna do. I can do the 18th.
18th, what about the 25th?
I can do the 25th.
Okay, so let's have those as our 25th being our alternate day.
So we're gonna do it, she's gonna come out on the 18th, hopefully. What time and say like,
I would assume we'll try to aim for 4:30, but I'll.
okay.
Make sure that works.
He needs to adjust the time and wants to do it a little, I'm guessing everybody can kind of wiggle a little.
Oh, I
Yeah,
can
uh-huh.
also,
Yeah, I don't have anything that day, so then you want the secondary date, 25th?
Mhm.
Okay,
Sounds good.
now the only problem I would have with that's the morning, I couldn't do a morning.
I
Kinda
think
like-
just
That'd be fine.
stalking on her calendar, she might be able to do the.
We'll make sure to keep
Okay.
that out in the minutes.
Just send her a calendar invite right now.
Okay,
So. And I will be fresh off of a cruise ship, but assuming I don't die at sea, I will be back.
then,
Fred?
You still work, Bryce?
I do, so I'll need to do whatever conflict of interest and John needs to do.
now, do we want to give, Thomas and
Yeah, that's what I figured.
the authority?
Wait a minute,
Do that?
then how can we pass this unanimously?
It, for the hiring of them. But like.
Oh, okay.
I mean, his firm is benefiting from this, direct.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
So
So I
the
need to-
hiring of his,
okay, all right. Sorry.
And independent, I can tell you, I've worked with Heather James, she's great. So.
But he would have to recuse himself of the vote to hire, if that's okay.
yeah, sure of that.
I'm still unclear yet, we need to give you authority to do that.
Yeah, yep.
We still have to vote on that.
Huh?
We would still need to vote on that.
We need to vote on that, right?
Yes.
Okay, so do I have a motion to allow Thomas to, in conjunction with this letter of intent,
If he finds a property that he thinks the township might be interested in and needs to act before a special meeting can be called, he has authority to enter into a letter of intent, non-binding
okay,
of that.
somebody will make a motion?
I'll move that.
Second.
He's typing.
Or you type.
Yes, I will second it.
Okay, a
I'll
motion
second.
made and second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same.
Just a commentary on my vote. I think one thing that might be interesting, since you mentioned Noblesville, somebody mentioned Noblesville Township, they've already got this, already doing it. Have a building with some services in there.
They, I believe, already own the building that they have and they're looking to fix it.
Okay. So it doesn't necessarily have the services he's talking about for this one.
They do have a shelter, but it's off-site. It's not in that
Okay.
building.
I'm just wondering if
Yeah,
it
they
would
own
be
a couple
worthwhile.
different, yeah. You could talk to her if you.
That's one, if we're going towards a community room and office space, Delaware Township, we can go up there,
Okay.
and to Fishers and tour that building. So, I mean, it's basically on what you want. Obviously, I'm looking for your guys' input too. I can't do this alone. And like I said, that building I think was overpriced for what it was. I don't think that would have been the best buy, but if all the things that are available,
There's just nothing.
the property was nice. It was good walkability. It had the land for a build out. I hated saying that we're gonna spend $2 million and then we're gonna need more money to build out on this. But the other alternative on that was we were receiving dollars in for the lease that was already there to start paying down the bond. So that was a benefit that we weren't anticipating too. So,
You're all for the landlord. Don't forget that.
All the joys that come into that.
My is not working.
Mhm.
Get out of here and fix it.
I see the only other building I know of is that one out there on, McKenzie and, right past the circle.
Yeah, it's a warehouse,
It's a warehouse.
so.
There's two warehouses out there, but only one's available.
Hmm.
But, and but we'd have to build out the whole thing. Yeah. So, and that was $1.8 million.
Okay.
So that was way over what?
Right.
Yeah, I think if,
Thanks,
we get
Cory.
a
Sorry about
rate
your
on
time.
Delaware Township, I think that I'd be interested to see how they're doing it. Cause I think that'll help me understand the size and type of community where this makes sense. Cause I don't know that I'm sold on the concept totally yet, but I can get there. I think I can get there.
You know,
What's
it's,
that, yeah, I hear you.
I said, I'd like to see like Delaware Township. He said they've got a center, a building and with all the services in. Cause I'd like to see, or at least have a little more sense of what type and size of communities are doing this and where it makes sense. Cause I'm not sold on the idea entirely, but I can get there. I think I can get there with some more
Okay.
research. So,
That'd be fine, great.
yeah,
And even again, if we start with a smaller facility,
yeah,
we can always issue another bond, pay off the existing bond. And try to go from there and do something because again, I think the scope of this is gonna matter a lot in terms of what facility size we have and what we actually offer based on community size.
Yeah, and if we
Not where you
buy
thought we'd be in 5 years
piece of
there, John.
property, we're gonna have to
Yeah.
do some work with that, okay, all right. Well, that would beat that one to death. Okay, we have no visitors, so we don't have to worry about that.
You have any?
yeah, I'm sorry, guys, and I'm gonna run through this real quick and then we're gonna be done. So. Here it is, okay. Township emails. Dakota requested that he would have a township email. And so I set that up, and so it's not linked to your personal email, so if there's anything there, it's, you know, blah, blah, blah. Is that something you would want?
Oh, I don't mind if my personal one's out there and people want to use that to reach me. It's
Okay,
fine.
and Fred, you're still good with that? Because these are also linked to the website, so then your email is on there. So
You can put my personal one on there if you want. Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
that's fine. So I wanted to throw that out there for everybody in case they wanted one as well. Then I have attached the changes to the agenda or to the meeting minutes. What's wrong?
Just went dead.
Oh, so you have the regular scheduled meetings that we have that has been sent to the paper. So that should be adjusted, although it was not adjusted in this week's paper. No, it wasn't. The last thing I've got is the annual report. And so this is something that we started doing this year. Not done it before. This is attached to the financial report. So with the legislation going the way that it's been going, we wanted to be able to, you know, show individuals what we've done in this year, right? And so this is our first attempt at making an annual report. And it just basically goes over, I won't read it to you guys, but talks about the individuals. Those pictures are from everything from this year. All the cemetery work, the work that, you know, we didn't pay for any of this work. That is the county's volunteers from the cemetery commission, and they've been able to put all of that work into it. And so those are just some of the pictures from there. Our top accomplishment has been our cemetery care contract to the Boys and Girls Club. We have a new provider for vision. So if an individual falls, you know, for the fire department, grandma falls, breaks her glasses, you know, she doesn't have insurance, she could come and apply and we would send her to the Walmart Vision Care and show her and get her a new pair of glasses and a
Like,
towards the back.
So I didn't get one.
And so that's something, it's handicap accessible and they've been working with us. We in turn helped with the increase of the civilian fire. So that's something to look forward to, that we've been able to get, you know, staffing that third ambulance. And then our new service contract with Meals on Wheels, and then maintaining the ones that we had to keep them accountable. Township assistance, I broke down in those pie charts, the difference between the utility and the shelter. rental home, RVs, mobile homes, and apartment complexes. And so you'll have a breakdown of where the dollars are going. And then I've also broken down the electric and natural gas usage of utility assistance that we see.
And remind me on those, do you pay the utility directly or?
Everything always goes straight to the vendor. Mhm. So, this month actually, or last month was actually kind of interesting because we have had our first, prescription medication request, which is a healthcare, category inside of our township assistance. It's always been something we've had, able to do, but we've never actually done it. And so, we've been working with that and that was a good story. I can share later. Obviously then a message from me and that's the end of that. So I wish all of our meetings could go by this quick. I apologize greatly for everybody that they don't, but that kind of gave you a synopsis of what it is we're doing.
And we'll get the corrected TA7 from you at some point.
Yeah, so I'll sit down with them because I pulled up the actual TA7 from the system again and the numbers are not.
Okay.
But it's also the numbers that I inputted from the state was like they auto format or auto populate. So I'm not sure where they're getting their numbers at because it's not from the numbers I inputted. So I'm not sure exactly how that is getting calculated in. So I'll have to dive more into that later. And yes, I'll send that up. I'll send that out before I actually submit the annual financial report.
We don't have the old business. We've covered all that. Next meeting is still, the regular meeting is March 13th.
Our regular meeting would be that, yes, but we'll
the
have a
next special
meeting.
meetings, we'll find out.
I'm talking with her and then.
Okay. All right. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
So
So,
moved.
second.
Second. Always great. Meeting's adjourned. You know, I didn't ask for any.
You're late too?
Huh?
We're late?
Oh, no, there's apparently a plan emergency that's been going on for the past hour. So,
Oh, what?
Check your email. I did send you an email regarding a legislative conference on this next week. And then I was gonna touch base with you if you're interested in going or not.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, I think I'm tied up with my own